Hello, hello, hello. We are going to dive into just a little bit of document stuff. So, as a new agent, before you start working with clients, you just need to understand a few of the documents really before you start having people sign things and understanding the purpose of those documents. So, we're going to go through 3 or 4 different documents, but not like in depth, just very quickly, okay? So the very first one that I want to show you is going to be the information about brokerage services. Now, I know as a new agent, you heard all about the IABS over and over and over and over again, and you've tested over it with the pre-licensing exam and the licensing exam and all that kind of stuff in the pre-licensing courses. But I want to assure you, how you explain this document to a potential client will determine if they sign the next document. Okay. I don't believe I've ever had a client that signed my contract but didn't sign this document. This is your first step in the door. Once you see that they signed this, more than likely they will sign anything else that you give them because they trust you enough to sign the first document that you hand over. Okay. The information about brokerage services is literally what it sounds like. It's a document with information about brokerage services. Those brokerage services are going to be how brokerages can service the consumer. Okay. So this is giving information to those consumers on how brokerages can serve them. Or another way to think about it is this document is going to give the definition or define what agency relationships are. They do not establish the agency relationship, meaning the establishment does not come until a contract is signed. This is not a contract. It's just information, okay? So on this document, what you're going to see is it tells that potential client or that customer or that client who are the license holders, brokers and agents. Second section, what are those minimum duties that the people in section 1, what do they have to do for you? Those people in section 1 must do at least at the bare minimum. They must do these things. Okay, while the people in section 1 do those things, do those list of duties, this is how they would do those list of duties as your representative. Okay, they can represent you as a seller and landlord and do these minimum duties. They can represent you as a buyer tenant and do these minimum duties. They can represent as an intermediary or both and do these duties, or even at this moment, which is going to be temporary, they will change this soon. They can represent someone as a sub agent and still be required to do these duties. Okay, so section 1, who are the license holders? Section 2, what must these people in section 1 do by the minimum? And while they're doing these minimum duties, how are they representing the client? By seller landlord, as a buyer tenant, as an intermediary, or a sub-agent. The next section is talking about avoiding disputes. We do not want to go to court. Nobody wants to argue and be upset and go to court. Nobody. Okay, so this is just a document saying that everybody wants to avoid that. Nobody wants to go anywhere near courtrooms. No one wants to have, bad agreements, anything like that. So have everything written out and clearly established. And then the very last section is going to have contact information. The first 3 lines are going to talk about other people. The last line is talking about you. So what is the broker firm that's representing you, or that is your brokerage? Put the license number, email, phone number, designated broker supervisor, license names, phone numbers, and emails, and then your name, license number, email, and phone number. Okay. Again, this is just information. So the initials that are here, which is not a wet signature, which is another way you can explain, this is really not a contract. It's just information. I just need you to initial that I gave it to you. That's it. That's it. It does not establish agency. It just defines what it is. That's it. Okay. Now, when I explain this document or where I'm trying to get anyone to sign it or trying to, just be compliant and again, get someone to sign this, all I'm saying to them is, my transaction coordinator is going to send you an email with some documents to sign. One of those documents is called the information about brokerage services. It is literally a document that gives you information about our brokerage services. It is just for you to initial saying that we gave you a copy. It does not establish that you are officially my client. And that's it. That's all it talks about. The next document that I wanted to share with you is called the general information and notice to consumers. This is basically a big law. This is a 5-page document. And all it does is it takes all of our flashy real estate terminology and it gives the consumer a definition. So they might save face in front of us and say, while we're having a conversation about statutory tax districts, and they might nod their head and be like, okay, yeah, I understand that. I understand that, and have no idea what you're talking about. And that's okay because they can go home and look at their cheat sheet and they'll have the definition. And then now the lights are going off in their head. Oh, I know what that means now. Now I understand what Jasmine was talking about, and so forth. This is another document that does not establish that anybody is your client. This is just a document that's, again, and it even has it above their signature line. By signing below, you're just acknowledging that you received, read, and understand this information. That's it. It is just a document with vocabulary, words, and definitions, like we're back in high school, wire fraud, water wells, all of the things. Okay. So these two disclosures, I'm going to tell you when I use these. So when I'm talking to a stranger, okay. So if I'm at a store and then I've sent them my Blink card and they have filled out my buyer, seller, or build on your own land questionnaire, I can tell Jason, can you go ahead and just send the disclosures? Okay. While I'm at home doing the research, you can do this two ways. I can tell them to go ahead and send them because I met them already and I saw them at the store, yada, yada. And I'm going to go home and I'm going to look at their submission and then go ahead and do my research and then I'll meet them again. Or what I do 90% of the time is I am going to look at your submission as the consumer. You're not my client yet. I'm going to look at the submission. I'm going to schedule a time to meet that person in person. And then when we're talking over everything, I let them know at the end of that meeting what you can expect now. Jason's going to send you the information about brokerage services and all the other disclosures along with the contract. Okay, all together. Now, if there's any reason why I would send the disclosures beforehand, that's the other 10%. And then I send the contract after we meet or whenever that time is allotted for. But I'm at least going to get my disclosures. Okay. So now the other thing when it comes to disclosures, you need to be disclosing who you represent in conversations. Okay. So if I am talking to someone at an open house, every single time a new person walks in the door, thank you for coming in. Hello, my name is Jasmine. I represent the seller. We learned all of this stuff again during our pre-licensing courses before we took our exams. It is very, 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 very important that you are always disclosing who you represent in conversations. Okay. So that's going to be a verbal disclosure that we need to make. And even if you're talking to the listing agent about a property, hi, my name is Jasmine. I had a couple questions for you regarding 123 Easy Street. I represent a potential buyer. So that agent knows, okay, you're not going to be a customer yourself. You're not just some random person talking to me. You have a potential buyer, and now they can turn on their light switch in their brain to make sure that they're answering questions, and they're up to par and things like that. So it goes on both sides. I know in a lot of the pre-licensing classes, it's more of a conversation regarding who you represent when it comes to representing the seller. But when you represent the buyer, you still need to disclose, who you're representing. If you call the title company, hi, my name is Jasmine. Can I speak to Mr. and Mrs. Title person? And they're going to say, okay, what is this regarding? It's regarding 123 Easy Street. I represent the buyer. Should just be like clockwork. Okay. We're always verbally disclosing who we represent in a transaction. Okay. All right. So the other type of disclosure I want to talk about is going to be in paragraph 8. Again, a lot of this is repeats from your pre-licensing course, but I really just want to highlight the fact, no pun intended. I really just wanted to highlight the fact that some of the stuff that you did learn in those pre-licensing courses, we actually use that every day in real life. But a lot of the stuff that you went through in those pre-licensing courses, we don't do it in real life. It's just what you needed to know to get through the courses, okay? But in paragraph 8 is talking about agent and broker and sales agent disclosure. If I'm doing a business deal or a transaction for my mother, I need to disclose in the contract and verbally and probably an email as well. Hey, I'm going to be sending you an offer on 123 Easy Street. I represent the buyer. Or thank you for your offer. Please put in paragraph 8A that I represent the seller and that I'm related to the seller. Things like that, who you're related to, or if you are the buyer yourself. You guys know that my husband and I have an investing company. So if I'm purchasing a property and on the offer that I sent over, it doesn't have my name. It has my business name on it, Charlotte Properties, and there. And then in paragraph 8, I'm putting buyer, like buyer is a one of the buyers is a licensed agent, or buyer is a licensed agent, just so that they know, okay, you're part of the contract or you're related to someone in the contract. Okay. Now here it tells you that you want to always disclose if it's a spouse, parent, or child, or again, the business entity or anything like that. But to be really honest, if I'm representing my brothers, my in-laws, or anything like that, I over disclose because that stuff is still important. And I just don't want anyone coming back to me later saying that I did not do so. Okay. And on the test and everything and on the contract, it tells you that you only need to do that for spouse, parent, child, or business entity. But I'm telling you, I over disclose. That information is pertinent to negotiations. Okay. Okay, so outside of your disclosures, these are your basic disclosures here on the contract. Another one that I really want you to think about is also your seller disclosure notice. Okay, so let's bring up a seller's disclosure notice and see what that looks like. This is not working out for me because I don't remember the full legit name. Okay, so let me go back to a transaction and find one for you, because that was not working. Not for me. It was not working for me. Um, so let me go to new. Actually, I could go to a template. My brain stopped working and everything else. Like, what is going on? Okay, your seller's disclosure notice. So I want you to think about being not just overly, I don't want you to just think to over disclose, right? Like I just said in paragraph 8. I want you to be overly professional. When you have a listing, get your seller's disclosure notice signed before you put your listing on the MLS. You want to have this information already available. You want to attract buyers. An easy way to attract buyers is by being extra, extra, extra professional and having everything organized and ready to go for the buyer's agent. Okay. You want to make everything as easy as possible. All right. Your seller's disclosure notice. This is not a notice that we are filling out, but it is a required notice for the seller to fill out for the contract. Okay. Before their home can be sold, this must be filled out. In most cases, if you're dealing with a cash buyer, they will say that they do not require the seller's disclosure notice, but legally it is required. So you get it filled out regardless, and you always hand it over. Okay. Now, this document, the biggest thing that I want to talk about with us is we have to go see the property before we list it. I do not care. I do not care. I do not care how bad you need a listing. If it's not located somewhere that you're willing to drive, you should not be taking the listing. You need to go see that listing before they sign paperwork. You need to have it officially in your head where the holes in the walls are, that the plumbing is doing this, that the HVAC is doing that. So then when the client fills out the seller's disclosure notice, you can go back and double check to make sure they filled it out honestly, correctly, and with completion. If they leave something out, they're going to end up having to redo it anyway. But if they do not put the truth, or they do not put out all the information in the seller's disclosure notice, that buyer has a right to then come back and fight for default because their document was untrue or it was left unfinished. Okay. This is very, 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 very important. And if you really want to get good on the listing side, you'll read this seller's disclosure notice and you'll have questions that you can ask while you're on your listing appointment. Have you ever had to file an insurance claim? They tell you yes, but then they put on the document that they've never had an insurance claim. You can attest to that and say, wait a minute, we spoke and you've had insurance claims before. That's not going to work. We cannot have false information or incomplete information on the seller's disclosure notice. Okay. There are other notices in our documentation, and where you can find the big majority of them are going to be here in paragraph 6. These are going to be your title notices, and there's literally from 1 all the way through 11. These are different notices that the seller can give to the buyer or is required to give to the buyer. These are not notices that are typically negotiated outside of the HOA addendum at the top, number 2. But the rest of this stuff is me just letting the client know. It's the seller letting the buyer know there's a propane system gas service area here. There's a PID on this property. There's been mold remediation here. There's water level fluctuations here. All of that kind of stuff. Okay. All of these are required notices. And again, they're all listed here as well. So if you want to start, and again, these are also disclosures, notices and disclosures, same kind of thing. So you want to go back and read these, go to the Trek website and find each one of these addenda and read through them so that you understand why we would or would never use them. Tide waters, there are no tide waters in Dallas. Okay, so we won't have tide water issues here. But we could have issues with utility districts, right? MUDs and PUDs. Okay, municipality utility districts or private utility districts. So you need to read this stuff and just make sure you understand it. But again, I just wanted to go over just the basics of disclosures. Again, disclosing the IABS when you have substantive conversation, disclosing the general information, notice to buyers and sellers, who you represent in that property in first contact. Hi, I represent the buyer. Hello, I represent the seller. Disclosing if there are any relations or anything like that in paragraph 8 of your 1 to 4, and all of the title notices that need to be disclosed that are listed in paragraph 6E, 1 through 12. Okay, 1 through 11. All right. If you have any questions about this, of course, you know where to find me. Thank you, and I hope this helps.